blood come the prince that was promised, and his will be disarmed, ice and fire.
Welcome back, Watchers Beyond the Wall. My name is Monica, and if you don't know who I am, I post videos pertaining to a Song of Ice and Fire content, and a little bit of whatever is on my mind. Here, we deep dive and overanalyze re-watching shows and movies over and over again to understand what the writer is trying to tell us. Without further ado, brace yourselves for rewatch. In the vast and unforgiving landscape where the chilly air is in contrast to the bleak opposition of honor and values above all else, one name holds strength and a beacon of hope. Ned Stark, the Warden of the North and Lord of Winterfell, is a man of great sense of duty and justice, standing as a pillar of steadfast moral upright values within a treacherous land known as Westeros. Eddard Stark, also known as Ned to those closest to him, carries the weight of his ancestors with a quiet dignity. Born to the noble house of Stark, his life was shaped by the harsh realities of the North and the lessons imparted to him by his father, Eddard Stark. Raised in the ancestral halls of Winterfell, he learned the values early on in his life of loyalty, honor, and sacrifice. These principles guide him and shape him through the trials and tribulations of his young youth and during the tumultuous events of a rebellion.
I tell you, Ned, I do not like this marriage. There are still those in the Seven Kingdoms who call me a usurper. Do you forget how many houses fought for Targaryen in the war? They bide their time for now, but give them half a chance. They will murder me in my bed, and my sons with me.
Leading to him being a responsible and noble leader. As winter approaches and the winds begin to change and howl, Eddard is thrust in an uncomfortable situation. Summoned by now the hand of the king into the court of King's Landing, his old friend Robert Baratheon, now king of the Seven Kingdoms, calls upon him to serve as hand of the king. Despite him not wanting to leave the north, Ned finds himself in a situation that calls upon him by duty and precedent, placing him at the heart of the realm, teetering on the brink of chaos. Within the shadowed halls of the Red Keep, Ned navigates a labyrinth of politic machinations and hidden agendas. The Lannisters, with their golden lions and hidden claws, pose a threat, while secret whispers and schemes of betrayal echoed in each corridor. The worst of them is on the horizon. Dark omens and unsettling dreams hint to a far greater evil, looming beyond the wall.
"Oh, my sweet summer child," old Nan said quietly, "what do you know of fear? Fear is for the winter, my little lord, when the snows fall 100 feet deep, and the ice wind comes howling out of the north. Fear is for the long night, when the sun hides its face for years at a time, and little children are born and live and die all in darkness, while the dire wolves grow gaunt and hungry, and the white walkers move through the woods."
A dark winter that will engulf Westeros if not kept unchecked. Amidst the brewing storm, Ned's resolve is tested before he puts his family first and upholding his honor and sacrifice, uncovering the truth that lays beyond the depths of the Red Keep. Jon Arryn, his predecessor, was murdered, but by who? A web of secrets needs to be uncovered to hold the fabric of the realm together. Eddard's at a crossroads, facing challenges that will test his resolve, his family, and the very foundation of the realm he swore to protect. In a world where right and wrong are blurred and the price of honor is too high, the Warden of the North must navigate the treacherous path before him, knowing that winter is coming. Lord of Winterfell. Eddard Stark, commonly known as Ned, is the Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North. Eddard Stark symbolizes the values of honor, duty, and and loyalty. His steadfast resolve to uphold these principles shapes his leadership and characteristics based on his family and the people he is sworn to protect. A man of few words, Ned is often characterized as being somber in his demeanor and an unwavering sense of justice.
Stannis looked disgusted. Your father was a stubborn man as well. Honor, he called it. Well, honor has its costs, as Lord Eddard learned to his sorrow.
Despite the harsh reality of the world around him, he remains committed to do what he believes is the right thing, even at great personal cost. Ned's journey is a testament to a complex of honor in a world rifled with a morally sensed corrupt standards within Westeros' society. His legacy, marked by both noble intentions and tragic outcomes, profoundly influences the destiny of those around him, playing a catalyst within the events to come. Eddard has a long face and long brown hair that's almost black. His closely trimmed beard is beginning to gray, making him look older than his 35 years. He has dark gray eyes reflecting his mood. They turn soft or foggy if he's upset, stone cold if he's angry. Eddard is shorter and less handsome than his older brother Brandon had been, according to Catelyn Stark. However, she notes that beneath Ned's stern outlook on life, he has a good, gentle heart. He keeps his faith close to the old gods and customs of the first men.
The blood of the first men still flows in the veins of the Starks, and we hold to the belief that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you would take a man's life, you owe it to him to look into his eyes and hear his final words. And if you cannot bear to do that, then perhaps a man does not deserve to die.
He's fiercely protective of his wife, Catelyn Stark, and their children, whom he loves deeply. Known for his unwavering sense of honor and justice, Ned is kind to his family, although some believe that he's cold and distant. Amongst his enemies, Eddard is viewed as being cold, having judgmental eyes and reflective of his frozen heart. While he rides a great warhorse in the north, he wears furs and leathers. He also wears silks and tunics, and a belt with a heavy long link of silver. His surcoat is a fine white velvet with a surcoat embedded on the heart, and his coat is gray with a white hue of black wool. Lord Stark also wields and is capable of fighting with sword and dagger. Amongst he uses ice, a Valyrian steel's greatsword that's been passed down from generations. As a second son, Eddard had never expected to become Lord of Winterfell.
What followed Prince Rhaegar's infamous abduction of Lyanna Stark was the ruin of House Targaryen. The full depth of King Aerys' madness was subsequently revealed in his depraved actions against Lord Stark, his heir, and their supporters after they demanded redress for Rhaegar's wrongs.
As he believed that the task was not meant for him, but his older brother Brandon. He felt less than and unequal to manage the task of being Warden of the North and Lord of Winterfell. Lord Stark also took little interest within the affairs south of the Neck. In 289 AC, Eddard traveled south to help Robert disband Greyjoy's rebellion. After the decisive siege of Pike and Lord Balon Greyjoy surrendered, Eddard took Balon's only surviving son, Theon, to Winterfell as a ward and hostage. While Ned tried to be a father figure to Theon while he was raising him from time to time, the boy still found Lord Stark to be cold. When Lord Jorah Mormont tried to sell poachers he had caught on his land into slavery in 293 AC, Eddard traveled to Bear Island island to bring him to justice for his crimes. Upon arrival, Ned found that Joron and Lynice Hightower had fled into exile. However, during his marriage to Catelyn, Ned had 5 children: Robb, Sansa, Arya, Brandon, and Rickon. Ned had taught Robb and Jon Snow, his illegitimate bastard son, the ways of combat strategy. In Ned Stark's youth, Eddard Stark, the second son of Lord Rickon and Lady Lyanna Stark, was born on Winterfell, and he had an older brother, Brandon, and 2 other younger siblings, Lyanna and Benjen Stark. At the age of 8, Eddard was fostered by the Lord Jon Arryn at the Eyrie, where he formed a close friendship with Robert. Jon Arryn became a second father figure for Ned. That's where his deep sense of honor came about. By 16, Eddard spent his time both at Winterfell and the Eyrie. During a visit to Winterfell, Eddard brought up the marriage proposition for Robert and Lyanna.
Robert would never keep to one bed, Lyanna had told him at Winterfell on the night long ago when their father had promised her hand to the young Lord of Storm's End. I hear he has gotten a child on some girl in the Vale. Ned had held the babe in his arms. He could scarcely deny her, nor would he lie to his sister. But he had assured her that what Robert did before their betrothal was of no matter.
Although Lord Rickard agreed, Lyanna doubted that Robert's faithfulness due to his multiple affairs. Simultaneously, Lord Roderick Welsard hoped to marry his daughter, Bobbery, to either Brandon or Eddard. In 281 AC, Eddard attended a tourney at Harrenhal with his foster family and siblings, where he met Howland Reed and Asha Dane. Despite his shyness, he danced with Asha after Brandon courted her. The tourney's highlights was when Prince Rhaegar Targaryen crowned Lyanna Stark as the Queen of Love and Beauty.
Ned remembered the moment when all the smiles died, when Prince Rhaegar Targaryen urged his horse past his own wife, the Dornish princess Elia Martell, to lay the Queen of Beauty's laurel in Lyanna's lap. He could see it still, a crown of winter roses, blue as frost,
surpassing his own wife, Elia Martell. A moment Eddard later recounted as the end of all happiness. The next year, Lyanna was abducted by Rhaegar. Attempted to win her back, Brandon rode to King's Landing, where he was arrested. Lord Eddard Stark, seeking justice, went to the capital as well to win both his children back, but King Aerys, the Mad King, executed them both. Aerys then demanded Jon Arryn surrender Eddard and Robert. Jon refused, and that is when the rebellion started. Robert's Rebellion. After the death of his father and brother, Eddard Stark became the Lord of Winterfell. Despite wanting to join Robert's rebellion, Ned was joined from the Vale to the north, was inherited by Goldtown's loyalty to the Iron Throne. He crossed the Mountains of the Moon to the Fingers and hired a fisherman to take him to White Harbor. However, the fisherman drowned in a storm, and his daughters brought Ned to the Three Sisters. There, Lord Boros borrowed Eddard to leave for White Harbor, warning him that if the rebellion fails, he needs to be silent to save his own life. Eddard called his banners and began to march south, joining Robb and the rebellion and Lord Hoster Tully at the Battle of the Bells. Afterwards, he wed Hoster Tully's eldest daughter, Catelyn Stark, now known as Catelyn Stark, but was then Catelyn Tully, and Jon Arryn married Hoster's younger daughter, Lisa Arryn, binding House Tully to the rebellion. The rebellion approached a victory at the Battle of the Trident.
The battle screamed about Lord Robert and Prince Rhaegar both, and by the will of the gods, or by chance, or perhaps by design, they met amidst the shallows of the ford. The 2 knights fought valiantly upon their destriers, according to all accounts. For despite his crimes, Prince Rhaegar was no coward.
where Robert killed Rhaegar Targaryen in one fell swoop, breaking every rib in his body. But Robert was wounded.
Lord Robert was wounded by the Dragon Prince in the combat, yet in the end, Baratheon's ferocious strength and his thirst to avenge the shame brought upon his stolen betrothed proved the greater. His war hammer found its mark, and Robert drove the spike through Rhaegar's chest, scattering the costly rubies that blazed upon the prince's breastplate,
leaving Eddard to sack King's Landing and dismantling Aerys' army in King's Landing. Upon arriving in King's Landing, Eddard discovered that Lord Tywin Lannister's forces had already sacked the city. He was outraged by the brutal murder of Rhaegar's wife, Elia Martell, and their children by Tywin's men. Eddard found King Aerys dead on the floor while Jaime Lannister sit upon the Iron Throne, which indicated that Jaime was the one to kill Aerys. This was dishonoring his vows in Eddard's eyes. Between the murders of Rhaegar's wife and his children, and Jaime being dishonored by the cruel acts of killing the king he was sworn to protect, Eddard had wanted justice in the name of the children and the king, but Robert said that it was necessary, and if not Jaime, then it would have been him. This created a rift between Eddard and Robert due to the grim acts that was committed in the name of warped justice in Robert's eyes. Eddard left King's Landing from Storm's End, leading a siege without a fight. He then traveled to the Red Mountains of Dorne to rescue his sister, Lyanna, from the Tower of Joy. There, he faced 3 Kingsguard knights, where they were in a battle that only him and Howland Reed survived. Eddard found the dying Lyanna, and she had him promise something that haunted him forever.
"Promise me, Ned," his sister had whispered from her bed of blood. She had loved the scent of winter roses.
Returning to Winterfell with his bastard son, Jon Snow, it stained his relationship with Catelyn, his wife, who was giving birth to their first true-born son, Robb, after the war. Eddard never disclosed Jon's mother, especially during the various rumors. He buried his kin's bones in the crypt of Winterfell and broke tradition by carving the statue for Brandon and Lyanna next to Lord Rickon, their father. His younger brother, Robin, who the fuck's Robin? His younger brother, Benjen, joined the Night's Watch, and Barbary Dustin resented Eddard for not returning her husband's bones. The events of Game of Thrones. Lord Eddard executes Garrett, a deserter from the Night's Watch, who claims to be attacked by the others. On their return to Winterfell, the party recovers a direwolf dead on the roadside. Her throat is slit through by a stag. This symbolism is implying the conflicts between House Baratheon and Lannister. They also encounter 5 newborn direwolf pups. Jon Snow advised his father to take the direwolf pups for each of the Stark children. Eddard agrees, but the direwolf pups have to be raised by the children, and if some would die or fall ill, it's their responsibility. The same day, a raven arrives bearing word of Jon Arryn's death. Jon Arryn fostered Eddard as well as Robert Baratheon when they were young boys, and served Robert faithfully as Hand of the King. Ned's first chapter opens up with the King's party, 300 strong, riding into Winterfell. The castle gates is a river of gold and silver and polished steel. 300 strong, a pride full of bannermen and knights, all sworn free riders and outriders. The vivid description hints at the grandeur of House Lannister, as the crown is burdened with severe debt, and Lannister is very much known for their massive amounts of wealth. The first person that Ned recognizes is Jaime Lannister.
Ned knew many of the riders. There came Sir Jaime Lannister, with hair as bright as beaten gold,
And it's also said in other POVs that Jaime looks more like a king than Robert does. At first, Ned doesn't even recognize Robert because he looks so different, and the years of being king has now made Ned look at him as a stranger.
Yet the huge man at the head of the column, flanked by 2 knights in snow-white cloaks of the King's Guard, seemed almost a stranger to Ned.
He doesn't even recognize Robert, and it's clear that when Robert walks to Ned, he doesn't see it the same way. Robert says it's like looking at a mirror. Years haven't even passed, and Ned looks exactly the same. However, Ned is shocked to see that Robert has gained 8 stones, 100 more pounds or so, after 9 years of being apart. After the meet and greet and catching up after 9 years away, Robert's immediate reaction is to see the crypts of Winterfell. Ned finds this a very much complimentary remark, as Robert has remembered the traditions of House Stark after so very long.
No sooner had these formalities of greeting been completed than the king had said to his hosts, "Take me down to the crypt, Eddard. I would pay my respects." Ned loved him for that, for remembering her, still, after all these years.
Within these first pages, it feels as though Ned is ashamed of Robert in some way. Ned contemplates about the ghosts of his ancestors. He expresses that he hopes the ghosts are not wandering around freely, as a disdain the unwillingness for them to see that he's bowed to Robert, his friend. He mentions that the first lords of Winterfell were as hard as the land they ruled, and styled themselves as kings in the north, predating their successors and dragon lords. This symbolizes and identifies how sacred the north truly is. This also becomes evident at the end of this book, when everyone swears allegiance to Robb after the death of Ned. They state,
"Why shouldn't we rule ourselves again? It was the dragons we married, and the dragons are all dead."
He pointed at Robb with a blade.
"There sits the only king I mean to bow my knee to, my lords," he thundered. "The king in the north."
why should they have to bend to anyone other than a Stark of Winterfell, the king of the north? Especially since the echo rang out through the darkness, and all around them the dead of Winterfell seemed to watch with cold and disapproving eyes. These words are not comforting facades, because Eddard knows the cold truth. He should have never bowed, and should have made the North an independent kingdom, so he feels ashamed to bring Robert down here, knowing that he has forsaken his land in a way.
For a moment, Eddard Stark was filled with a terrible sense of foreboding. This was his place, here in the north. He looked at the stone figures all around him, breathed deep in the chill silence of the crypt. He could feel the eyes of the dead. They were all listening. He knew. And winter was coming.
Upon reaching the last crypts along the tomb line, they have a conversation. Robert expresses his belief that Lyanna should have been buried on a sunny hillside, but Ned clarifies that her wish was to rest in the Winterfell crypts because she was a true Stark of Winterfell. Ned recalls the moments of Lyanna's death, and only him and his friend Howland Reed were present. Eddard begrudgingly accepts Robert's offer to place him as a Lord Hand of the King. Lord Aaron was the previous Hand of the King, and he had passed. He also allows Robert to create a betrothal between Prince Joffrey and his daughter Sansa Stark. At the end of this chapter, Ned Stark experiences a profound sense of foreboding, hinting to his untimely death.
The crypt continued on into darkness ahead of them, but beyond this point the tombs were empty and unsealed, black holes waiting for their dead, waiting for him and his children.
as he stands in the crypts of Winterfell, surrounded by stone figures, reflects in the hollow eyes of his ancestors that came before him, and realizes that the dead represent a stone figure watching, waiting, listening. They are all waiting and calling him. Within this instance, winter is coming is a powerful metaphor to underscore the dangers and darkness and death that are coming within the long night, and he knows that if he leaves Winterfell now, he may not return. The foreshadowing is absolutely crazy. Any little passage that you read, there is something. It means something. It's crazy how well detailed this book truly is. It's a masterpiece. The arrival of a clandestine message from Lisa Arryn, which is Catelyn's sister, and the widow of Jon Arryn, sent a message, a warning to the Starks of the Lannisters' involvement regarding her husband, Jon Arryn's death, and the immediate subsequent danger that they are in. This revelation, putting the Lannisters in a treacherous light, reveals the severity and catalyst for Eddard's actions and decisions, framing the Lannisters as formidable enemies and not someone to support or trust. This letter subsequently ended any peace that the Starks could have had with the Lannisters. The Starks act hastily and not take very many strategic actions because of the words of Lisa Arryn. Bran Stark fell from the broken tower. His father is Ned, and he is one of the younger siblings amongst the Stark children. He fell from the tower because Jaime Lannister pushed him from the building after he found them in a sexual situation. Jaime and Cersei both know that if he could have told anyone what he had saw, they would have died. Same with their children. When Jaime pushes him out of the building, he pushes him out and says, "The things I do for love." Now, because Bran fell and was put in a coma for a significant part of time, this delayed the royal party from departing from Winterfell to King's Landing, and tensions kind of grew, waiting for the boy to wake up. Eventually, the royal party can't wait any longer. It's necessary for them to hit the King's Road as soon as possible. Eddard doesn't want to leave Bran behind, and he wants to stay there, but he understands that the court and the politics doesn't wait for anyone. As Ned and Robert continue their journey southwards, they clash over a diplomatic dispute. Daenerys Targaryen and Viserys have been sent to Essos. They fled in the dead of night after the rebellion happened. Daenerys was a young newborn child when the assassination on Dragonstone occurred. Now they're in exile, as the Targaryen dynasty had been overthrown by the events of the rebellion. Because of Daenerys' marriage to Khal Drogo, it could mean devastation for the realm, and it would gain her brother Viserys the army, gold, and support he needs to win back the Seven Kingdoms. Robert is scared and doesn't want to be overtaken.
The king frowned. "A knife, perhaps, a good sharp one, and a bold man to wield it." Ned did not feign surprise. Robert's hatred of the Targaryens was a madness in him.
But his fear more stems from the events that Aerys inflicted on the realm, and now he believes that the Targaryens are willing to do the same horrible things. But in results, Robert is also doing the horrible things that he is scared of by trying to annihilate every Targaryen he gets his hands on. This is disgusting and horrible in Ned's eyes, as he finds it dishonorable to hire somebody to assassinate Daenerys for only doing her brother's bidding, and they are across the sea, so they pose no danger in his mind. The conflicting diplomatic approaches really contrast the need for vengeance that Robert has, and his quest to deliver justice even in the harshest and brutal means. The deep-seated hatred that Robert feels for the Targaryens is fueled during the events of the rebellion. The brutal murder of Rhaegar Targaryen's wife, Elia Martell, and their children by Tywin Lannister was a horrific atrocity that should have never been committed. The children were so badly murdered to the fact that you couldn't even recognize the kids anymore. Robert excused this for just war, but Eddard demanded that it was murder.
He remembered the angry words they had exchanged when Tywin Lannister had presented Robert with the corpses of Rhaegar's wife and children as a token of fealty. Ned had named that murder. Robert called it war.
The fact that you couldn't even recognize the children's bodies afterward is crazy to me. And the fact that Robert didn't see anything morally wrong with that is absolutely absurd. Finally, they shift the topic to a new Warden of the East, revealing the favoritism within court and how far the Lannisters have come take a firm grasp within the court. Eddard suggests that Stannis Baratheon should be the new Warden of the East, seeing as he has more of the responsibility. And remember, Stannis Baratheon is also Robert Baratheon's brother. I was going to say son, but it's his brother. That's not good enough. And he still wants Jaime Lannister to be Warden of the East, which makes no sense because Jaime Lannister has literally knighted himself amongst the Kingsguard. And the Kingsguard's oath is that they will uphold no land, father no children, no seek no glory in no battle. So how the fuck is he going to become the Warden of the East, be Lord of Castle Rock, when he's a Kingsguard member? If anything, if it doesn't go to Stannis, it should go to Tyrion, his brother, but he's a little short, so can't go to him, heaven forbid. This shows the nepotism and favorment within the power dynamic within Westeros, and how cruel the players will be in outcasting others outrightly. The incident involving Eddard Stark's youngest daughter, Arya, and the Crown Prince Joffrey Baratheon, and Arya's direwolf Nymeria foreshadows crucial developments within the narrative. Themes of conflict, justice, and harsh power grabs are played within the situation. Joffrey was injured by Nymeria, and this foreshadows the conflict between Starks and Lannisters again and again. Queen Cersei demands that one of the direwolves need to be punished. They can't find Nymeria, so they punish Sansa's direwolf Lady instead. And this is a direct order from the Queen, and Robert allows this sick, twisted form of justice to commence.
"Do it yourself, then, Robert," he said in a voice cold and sharp as steel. "At least have the courage to do it yourself." Robert looked at Ned with flat, dead eyes and left without a word, his footsteps heavy as lead.
Eddard decides to execute Lady himself, seeing as the Stark's principles embody the idea that the man who passes the sentence must swing the sword. Theoretically speaking, if we are talking literally, Queen Cersei should have been doing this grievous act herself, or Joffrey. But Eddard wanted to make sure that she was handled with care and the utmost respect she deserves.
Cersei Lannister regarded him suspiciously. "You, Stark? Is this some trick? Why would you do such a thing?" They were all staring at him, but it was Sansa's look that cut. "She is of the North. She deserves better than a butcher."
Queen Cersei Lannister wants the skin of the direwolf, but Eddard refused, telling his men to ride day and night to get Lady back to Winterfell so she can be buried at the heart of the North.
When it was over, he said, "Choose 4 men and have them take the body north. Bury her at Winterfell." "All that way?" Jory said, astonished. "All that way," Ned affirmed. "The Lannister woman shall never have this skin."
The sacrifice that was made by losing Lady so young in Sansa's life is profound in the hostility and anger she feels. I mean, she's completely isolated when she is captured at King's Landing, and one of the only things that could have brought her solace was Lady, but she was taken from her so young, and the idea that she wasn't able to fully connect with Lady is extremely saddening. And there's many times in her chapters where she often thinks about Lady and the profound sense of grief she feels. Eddard Stark's early days in King's Landing, these events are served as harbingers of the tumultuous events that will follow the discovery of Catelyn traveling to King's Landing after she realized that somebody didn't just want Bran to die, but to murder him. These accusations are brought upon when an assassin tries to finish off the job. And Catelyn knows her son. When has Bran ever fell? She often compares him to being a squirrel. He is enrooted and embedded within the walls he climbs and the trees that he climbs. So he couldn't have fallen. He would have had to be pushed. And when she went up to the broken tower, she found a golden strand of hair. Not only that, when she found the assassin trying to murder her son, he had a Valyrian steel dagger, which Littlefinger said that Tyrion Lannister owned. But this sets the stage for further domestic disputes between Starks and Lannisters. Timeline of events. Jon Arryn dies. Lysa accuses the Lannisters of having something to do with it. Bran falls. The Lannisters have something to do with it. Now, Bran gets almost assassinated. Lannisters have something to do with it. The incident on the King's Road. Arya and Joffrey. The Lannisters had something to do with it. Over and over again, the Lannisters are looking like Grim Reapers. They're not looking good. And of course, we're going to assume that they have something to do with this as well because all fingers point to them. Ned allows Arya to be trained with a sword that she got from Jon Snow, her half-brother, that he gave her when she left Winterfell. The sword is called Needle. Under Syriel Farrell, he will teach her the ways and masteries of the dance. This is what they call it in Bravos. To be a skilled warrior and the influence of the training, Arya must become a formidable and focused leader. Although Ned is doing this to help Arya cope with the sudden changes that they're facing in their lives, he also is doing this for a way to Arya to express herself. She is wild, courageous, and loves to learn new things. Sudden hint for wanting to know how to survive in Westeros is key. He wonders if this won't be just mere fun for her, but a necessity. Early on Ned's arrival within King's Landing, he realizes that Jon Arryn's death was sudden and suspicious, and Jon Arryn was learning about the lineages and histories within the great families of the Seven Kingdoms. This hints that he was researching the lineage of the Baratheon line. But why was he doing this? It's very suspicious, and Ned wants to understand exactly what Jon Arryn was looking for, and why. Robert gets another letter regarding Daenerys Targaryen, how she has become pregnant now with Khal Drogo's son. This information is key for the stability of the realm. Ned doesn't want to do anything, seeing as it would be ill will to kill a child and her unborn child. It's not war that Robert is fearful of. It is a child that he is fearful of.
Your Grace, I never knew you to fear Rhaegar. Ned fought to keep his scorn out of his voice and failed. Have the years so unmanned you that you tremble at the shadow of an unborn child? Robert purpled. No more, Ned!
The themes of loyalty versus duty, and the idea that Robert is going mad with worry that he will be usurped, is leading his actions to act no different than the Mad King. Eddard can't acknowledge that the actions that Robert is doing to secure a realm with fear and blood is honorable no longer, so Eddard resigns his position as Hand of the King. Another crucial part within this timeline timeline is that Jon Arryn was seeking out Robert Baratheon's bastards, and Ned Stark also visits them, trying to understand where Jon Arryn was going with these leads. What was he investigating? This investigation places him at odds with the Lannisters, and puts him in a vulnerable position, as the ambush by Sir Jaime Lannister showcases the ruthless lengths of which the Lannisters are willing to go to just to protect their secrets and powers. Jaime's attack on Eddard's life and own guards from Winterfell is in direct response to Catelyn from seizing Tyrion, showcasing that the Lannisters are willing to use violence as leverage and a manipulation of control to get people to do what they want. This incident also makes the open hostility between two factions for everyone to see. The blatant disregard for one's said actions will engulf both families. And we have to remember that though Jaime was attacking Ned because Catelyn seized Tyrion, it was also because Cersei knew that Ned was very close to the truth, and once he found that out, he needed to die. He needed to die beforehand, or it would have been too dangerous for the realm if he knew that information. Ned is an honorable guy. He's gonna say it no matter what scenario. At least we would have hoped. Robert visits Ned during his recovery, while he pardons him and reinstates him as Hand of the King, temporarily mending their strained relationship. Eddard refuses to have any implication within the annihilation of the Targaryen children. Although Robert doesn't want to talk about it, that's his problem solving for everything, is he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. It's too late, seeing as there's an outrider to kill them anyways, and he can't stop it even if he wanted to. Due to the injury of his leg and the fever dreams caused by it, he keeps having nightmares of the Tower of the Joy, where Lyanna Stark, his sister, was murdered by Rhaegar Targaryen. This haunting memory shows how much Eddard is stuck in the past and his futile attempt to save his sister.
He dreamt an old dream of 3 knights in white cloaks and a tower long fallen, and Lyanna in her bed of blood. As they came together in a rush of steel and shadow, he could hear Lyanna screaming, "Eddard!" she called. A storm of rose petals blew across a blood-streaked sky, as blue as the eyes of death. "Lord Eddard!" Lyanna called out again. "I promise," he whispered. "Leah, I promise."
While Robert is out hunting in the Kingswood, Eddard discovers that Robert Baratheon's 3 legitimate children are actually products of incest, both by Cersei Lannister and her brother, Jaime Lannister. This revelation is a bombshell. This also foreshadows the unrelinquished chaos that will unite a civil war. Eddard decides to confront Cersei, offering her a chance to flee with her children rather than have her blood on his hands, and he doesn't want the blood of the children on his hands. This is his sense of honor and mercy.
"You'd do well to listen, my lady. I shall say this only once. When the king returns from his hunt, I intend to lay the truth before him. You must be gone by then, you and your children, all 3, and not to Casterly Rock. If I were you, I should take ship for the free cities, or even farther, to the Summer Isles or the port of Ibn, as far as the winds blow." "Exile," she said. "A bitter cup to drink from." "A sweeter cup than your father served Rhaegar's children," Ned said, "and kinder than you deserve."
Furthermore, this act of mercy, unlimited to the fate of consequence, shows just how kind Ned truly is, giving Cersei an opportunity to leave before Robert assassinates her. Eddard becomes isolated and vulnerable as he realizes that both Renly Baratheon and Peter Baelish are working almost against him and not for him.
He leaned back and looked Ned full in the face, his grey-green eyes bright with mockery. You wear your honor like a suit of armor, Stark. You think it keeps you safe, but all it does is weigh you down and make it hard for you to move. Look at you now. You know why you summoned me here. You know what you want to ask me to do. You know it has to be done, but it's not honorable.
Realizing that Renly and Peter Baelish have asked him to seize control over the royal children and use them as a way of regency rather than telling Robert about it, because we have to remember, Robert at this point has been slain by a bull and the clock is running out of hours as Robert is slowly dying. The power struggle of taking the children in the dead of night away from Cersei so they can use them as a means to an end, and having Eddard be the regent would also work in many different ways. But it is not the honorable way to go about things, and Ned refuses, as that is not what Robert would have wanted. Peter Baelish, also known as Littlefinger, betrays Eddard. He says that he garnered the support of the City Watch. Littlefinger is cunning and treacherous, not having an allegiance to one person but multiple, using them as a means to an end. He did warn Eddard not to trust him in King's Landing. He pretty much answered that promise with treachery, as he predicted before. Eddard is scared for the safety of his daughters, Sansa and Arya. He wants them to return north on the Wind's Witch and have them to go back to Winterfell while they'll be safe. He also has an order delivery to Stannis Baratheon on Dragonstone so that Stannis knows that he's the rightful heir, and Joffrey, Tommen, and Marcella are bastards and he needs to get to King's Landing as soon as possible. This action underscores his foresight, seeing can think ahead and navigate the road ahead for the safety of his daughters and the stability of the realm. But it also foreshadows that the Stark daughters will scatter and the children of the family will be separated by the end of this book and the next. Sansa unknowingly betrayed her father. We have to understand that at the start of these books, the children of the Starks, Sansa and Arya, are young girls that don't understand the ways of politics, especially Sansa. She's very much naive. She doesn't want to leave the capital. She wants to stay with Queen Cersei. She wants to stay with the tourneys and watching the singers have tea parties. She just wants to be with her betrothed Joffrey. She doesn't understand the machinations that are being unfolded right underneath her nose. But this sets off a chain reaction that helps Cersei gain the upper hand. In doing so, Littlefinger ultimately betrays Ned and lies to him about the City Watch being on their side. Janis Light slaughters Ned's men, and Littlefinger seizes the Valyrian steel dagger.
As his men died around him, Littlefinger slid Ned's dagger from its sheath and shoved it up under his chin. His smile was apologetic. "I did warn you not to trust me, you know."
Syriel Forel's self-sacrifice allows Arya to escape Sir Meryn Trant, allowing her to go on a path of survival. In contrast, Cersei is captured by the Lannisters, marking the beginning of her suffering through the manipulation and control of the Lannisters. The diverging paths within the two sisters showcase Arya's involvement becoming a trained sword assassin, contrast of within opposition, Sansa gaining and ascending to power and influence. Robb Stark, Ned's eldest son, responds to his father's imprisonment by calling the northern banners of Winterfell, and they begin marching southwards to reclaim victory. This begins the dispute of Lannisters and Starks within the open acts of war. war. This act mobilizes and instills the idea that Robb should be king, although this happens later on once they truly execute Ned. The idea that the Northern men and the Riverland men are coming together showed the inevitability of the War of the Five Kings. So many things are stacked against each other that the idea that it won't spiral into chaos was inevitable. Varys visits Eddard in his captivity, offering a glimmer of hope for Ned's survival through the ideas of treachery. He has to admit that he was rebelling against the crown, even though he wasn't. Eddard dismisses this notion at first, but realizes that they have Sansa, and her life is in danger. He ultimately sacrifices his honor just to save his daughter. The plan goes awry once King Joffrey, driven by cruelty and a desire for power, declares that Eddard must be executed, even though his mother, Viserys, and High Sparrow disagree with such a grievous act. He declares that treachery should never go unpunished, and the public beheading of Eddard is carried out through his own greatsword Ice. This
My mother bids me let Lord Eddard take the black, and Lady Sansa has begged mercy for her father. He looked straight at Sansa then, and smiled. But they have the soft hearts of women. So long as I am your king, treason shall never go unpunished. Sir Ilyn, bring me his head.
public display of cruelty and brutality underscores the ruthlessness and means for authority within Westeros. This grievous act shocked and solidified the realm's chaos, representing Joffrey's reign of tyranny. Joffrey places Eddard's head on a spike and forces Sansa to veer it. This horrific symbol of brutality and cruelty within the Stark family underscores and sets off the eventual events of the War of the Five Kings. Before Rickon and Bran already knew their father was dead, they had visions beforehand, letting them know that something terrible might happen to their father and brother. Rickon tells Bran within the book series that Robb and Catelyn won't come back ever again, and Rickon constantly sleeps in the crypts with Shaggy Dog because he's trying to find his brother. At first, Bran dismisses this until Bran has a dream of his own trying to chase his father down within the crypts of Winterfell. Now, sadly, these isn't the first dreams or the only dreams that the boys have of this. Jon Snow also experiences the same dreams. A clash of kings. Eddard is dead, but certain things have to happen for his burial process, and we are constantly talking about that through this book. A stonemason crafts a granite statue of Ned Stark within the crypts of Winterfell.
Do dead men dream? Bran asked, thinking of his father. In the dark crypts below Winterfell, a stonemason was chiseling out his father's likeness in granite. Some say yes, some no, the maester answered. The dead themselves are silent on the matter.
Tyrion Lannister orders the removal of Eddard's head and other heads of victims from the pikes of the Red Keep. He then sends Ed's bones to the Riverlands for Catelyn Stark to inspect. She then orders the bones to the north so he may be buried at the proper crypts of Winterfell alongside his father, brother, and sister. However, we are unable or not aware exactly if he was able to get to the north before the Ironborn captured Moat Cailin. A storm of swords. Sansa, still being held hostage within King's Landing, hopes to marry Willem Tyrell and wants to name a son Eddard, but she later marries Tyrion Lannister. Jean Westerling tells Robb Stark, his queen, she wishes to name one of their sons Eddard and Brandon if they have twins, but Robb is killed at the Red Wedding. After the battle beneath the wall, Stannis Baratheon declares that he would make Jon Snow, Jon Stark, and Lord of Winterfell. But Jon refuses, declaring himself a Night Watch member now and always. A Dance with Dragons. Jon Snow remembers that Janos Slynt was complicit within his father's death and executes him at Castle Black for insubordination.
"If you have any last words, now's the time to speak them," he said, expecting one last curse. Janos Slynt twisted his neck around to stare up at him. "Please, my lord, mercy, I'll go. I will. No, thought Jon. You close that door. Longclaw descended.
In White Harbor, while Manderly reflects on Eddard's death and publicly supports Stannis Baratheon over Tommen Baratheon. Meanwhile, Bran Stark trains to become a Greenseer, having a vision of his father from the past through the Heart Tree in Winterfell's Godswood. Through the Weirwood, Bran hears Eddard's heartfelt prayers for his wife's forgiveness and for Jon and Robb to grow together as brothers. Theon Greyjoy accompanies Lady Barbary Dustin to the walls within Winterfell's crypts, where they view Eddard's statue. Barbary holds Eddard responsible for the death of her husband, Lord William Duskton, and vows that if she does find Eddard's bones, she will prevent him from being buried in the crypts as revenge for Ned failing to recover her husband's remains. Despite this, many Northerners within the Northern houses still uphold Ned in a high regard and is preparing to fight against House Bolton for the treacherous acts that they inflicted on Stark and want to rescue the girl known as Arya Stark, who is actually Jean Poole, Sansa's friend. During Cersei Lannister's Walk of Atonement through King's Landing, she is haunted by the face of a commoner that reminds her of Ned Stark. The aftermath of Ned Stark's death, meaning and consequences. The death of Eddard Ned Stark, the honorable Lord of Winterfell, is a perilous moment within the narrative of A Song of Ice and Fire. His execution reverberates throughout the Seven Kingdoms, setting off a cataclysmic of events that deeply affect the power dynamic of Westeros. The aftermath of Ned's death is laden with meaning and illustration of themes of power, betrayal, and the ruthless pursuit of power, while also foreshadowing significant future events and developments. Ned Stark's execution by Joffrey Baratheon shocks the realm, and its immediate inaction further demonstrates the conflict between such houses. Despite the assurance from Cersei Lannister and Varys that his life would be spared if he confesses to treason, Joffrey declares that this is not good enough and executes him anyways. The unparalleled and cruelty behind such act shows how compulsive and unable Joffrey is to listen to his own counsel. This act also shows the idea that the Starks and the Lannisters are truly at odds with each other. Bran Stark, upon learning of his father's death, and declares war against the Lannisters. His campaign is driven by the desire for vengeance and justice, leading him to proclaim himself as King of the North, declaring that the North has been an independent kingdom for very many years, and the only lords lords they ever bent the knee to was the dragons, so why should they bend the knee to a stag? This also foreshadows the clash that many have for the throne. Robert doesn't want the throne. He only wants vengeance and justice for the crimes committed against his family and father. He wants the North to remain an independent kingdom. That is all. Ned's death is profound, especially for the lives of his children, and set motions underway, such as Sansa being held against her will in King's Landing and enduring psychological trauma, manipulation, and physical abuse by the hands of the Lannisters, shaping her for the better or the worst, especially given the situation that she is alone. Maester Aemon expresses the words that a Targaryen alone in the world is a dangerous thing. Given that statement, you can say that for anyone, especially Sansa. Being alone and isolated, stuck in her thoughts, can drive her to do crazy things, especially since in A Dance of Dragons, she's working with Littlefinger. Arya has created a shit list, and she will come out for blood and vengeance, especially now since she's being trained by the Faceless Men, and her evolvement for becoming a formidable assassin is evident in the sacrifices that she had given up. The power vacuum left by Ned's death leads to a multitude of uprisings known as the Five Kings. The Lannisters, trying to consolidate their power, are faced by multiple fronts of opposition, including the Starks, Baratheon, and Tully forces. Ned's death puts them in a treacherous and ruthless light that now many see that their quest for power and to consolidate the Iron Throne is highlighted by dangerous means. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. It was a long one, but if you stayed in through the end, thank you so much for watching this week's episode. Come back Sunday and we will have another video about A Song of Ice and Fire. Thank you so much and have a good day. Watchers beyond the wall.